shout out to Maxine Waters. She's one of the only politicians that I like. I had a chance, I never met her, but I had a chance to be among her. A couple years back, I was at Congressional Black Caucus here in Washington, D.C., and she went ahead and joined with Rhapsody and did a talent show, and she's just got real good energy. I like her. I mention her because, you know, I've heard that people think I'm cocky or arrogant, and I don't care what people think as far as my personality. I know I'm not arrogant, but as a musician, songwriter, artist, lyricist, more than anything, I have songs that I write that I have fun with, that may reflect, you know, a little bit of a cocky side of me. And I am all-encompassing. But it's not cocky, it's confidence. And what I will say is, I brought up Maxine Waters because I know that she sat down with Meg Thee Stallion, and I know that Joe Biden sat down with Cardi B prior to his election. And if you listen to Meg's music and Cardi's music, it's anything but humble. This is as vain as it gets. It's very cocky, it's very arrogant, it's very inflated ego. They're putting people down for the way that they look, what they have, what they don't have. I mean, and so my opinion is that it's arrogant if it's rooted in things that you can't obtain. Like, for me, my confidence is not rooted in the jewels or the money or anything like that. It's rooted in characteristics of our Creator. Things that many of you cannot obtain. Things like honor, dignity, the inability to be bought. You know, character, purity of heart, stuff like that. So you call it arrogance, but remain silent when it comes to these mainstream artists. And that's no dig at Cardi or Meg. Everybody's at different places in their evolution, and you know, it's debatable, but I think that for the most part, artists have a right to, you know, just tell their truth. Anyways, this brings me to the topic of gender, and I know I posted about gender a little bit earlier this week, but I'm gonna go in a little bit deeper about gender. And I've observed some resentment on the end of men, and I'm making a generalization because I can't speak for all men, but I've observed some resentment and animosity and this disdain of where our culture has taken us and how vain the music has become. And like I said, I write vain music sometimes, but I write music about all different things under the sun. And from the male perspective, it appears as if women have become self-absorbed, self-obsessed, ego-inflated, and literally worshiping our appearance. And it seems like as the years go by, it's like more and more distance from our hearts, you know. The layers of makeup are like a mask that offer a barrier between the real us, and men don't like it. From my perspective, it was birthed out of this push for self-love, but people didn't really know how to love themselves, so instead they interpreted self-love as vanity. Specifically, the population, especially at least, the population of women who for generations had been told that they didn't represent a standard of beauty. They feel as if their vanity, you know, or this over display of self-love is an act of rebellion to some degree. Almost like, for years you taught me that, I should not appreciate how I look. And now all I'm going to do is appreciate how I look. I'm going to love all my features. I'm going to love my physical everything, my body, my lips, my hips, all my curves, every aspect of me. Everything that you told me not to love is what I'm going to go ahead and love. And maybe to the extreme. And I can relate to this, but I'll take my word back. Maybe not to the extreme, but not putting it in its right place, right? Because our Creator made us, and He made us beautiful creatures. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with recognizing your physical beauty. So I'll never tell a woman not to feel beautiful. Feel beautiful, women. But I will say, put it in perspective. Yes, you should like your physical appearance, but you should also love your character. You should love your purpose. You should love what you bring to the world. Your heart is a body part. Do you love that too? Your brain is also your body. Do you love that as much as your fatty, your donkey, your butt? I know some women who don't even want to have children because they don't want to ruin their bodies. And a lot of men look at this position as disgusting. They're disgusted by us and what we have been minimized to, what we've been reduced to, and they're turned off by what we prioritize. And this is the reason why so many women feel unloved and likely will never attract the man that they desire. It's because of what they prioritize. So I got this book, and I had to make sure that I was good. I had to wipe the tears because I had like some dry tears all over my face. I've been crying this morning, like a crybaby. Oh my goodness, I've been crying reading this book. This book is the 40 Hadiths of Mother Aisha, and I ordered it, and it came in, I think, either yesterday or day before yesterday, and I read the whole thing this morning. I was in bed reading. It's a very, very short read. I was able to get it done in like an hour or two, and I just loved it. I loved it. It's by Nuruddin Knight, and I remember feeling, in my formative years, kind of slighted. Growing up in Islam, it was hot when I would spend time in Atlanta, and even the summers in Hartford, Connecticut, summers get hot, and we would have to wear, hijab and these skirts, down the floor, and it was hot, and I'd get sweaty. And I just would watch the guys, and they got to become leaders in the mosque, and they didn't have to be so restricted, and they could say what they wanted. And I remember always asking the question, why couldn't women be imams? It bothered me a lot. My father was an imam, and I would just stare at him in the way that he had this magnetism, and the things that he would he would say would be just so brilliant and genius, and he changed lives. He saved lives. He spent many years as an imam, and he also worked upstate in the New York penitentiary, and he is the first Muslim chaplain in America, and he solved the assassination of his mentor and close friend Malcolm X. He's written in this book, Great Black Leaders, And like so many men just would come up to my father all the time and just thank him. So many innocent men that got put in prison, and my father released them. Like with Malcolm's assassination, they confessed to my dad. He got the guys who were wrongly accused of Malcolm's assassination out, and he got the right guy in who confessed to my dad. It's written, and you can look him up, Nuruddin Faiz. It's written. There's a few articles about it, and the community just looked at him like a hero, and I would look at him with such admiration, and I wanted to be like that. You know, I wanted to be a leader, and it was always very bothersome, very troublesome why women were not allowed to be imams. And it was something as a youngin' I really grappled with, because I had such respect for him and his work. And I was almost put off by the faith as to why I couldn't be a leader. I really wanted to be a leader. And when I would ask, you know, my dad, I would ask other people, they would say that our period is really the reason why. Yes, our period. Our menses, ladies. And, you know, if there's a period of time, you know, throughout the month, if it's 20% to 25% of the month that women are restricted from making prayers, which is a part of the faith, that when you're on your period, you know, the formal prayers, you can pray whenever you want. You can pray all day if you want. But the formal prayers of like the 5 rakas, you know, where you're going down in sajda and things like that, you're not supposed to make those prayers when you're on your period. And then when you're fasting during the month of Ramadan, the month that we're in right now, you're not supposed to make those prayers, and you're not supposed to fast. So as a woman, you're supposed to eat. You break your fast during the months that you're on your period, the days that you're on your period during the month of Ramadan. And it's for our own well-being, because our energy is depleted to varying degrees, and we need the caloric intake health-wise to be okay during our period. And admittedly, I have burned some bridges due to my premenstrual syndrome. PMS has gotten the best of me. Some months I'm a lot more mature than I used to be, but my hormones have gotten the best of me. I've cussed some people out before in my day, and I started doing personal inventory. Like, I'm always cussing people out. I'm not really a vulgar person, but you know, I was more prone to give somebody a piece of my mind, a tongue lashing during a specific part of the month. And I burned some bridges. And there were times that I got so angry at my loss that I flipped Monopoly games. The game is over. All due to my PMS. And there are hormonal changes that women incur when it's that time of the month. And I saw my period probably like other women as a burden, even to the point where I started advocating that it should be allowed for us to take off work for the first at least few days of our period. And every woman is different, you know, it affects women differently. However, I know I'm very, very energetic, and for the first couple of days I usually want to stay in bed, and our appetite increases typically during that time. And for that reason, you know, alone it's been told not to fast. Health-wise, it would be detrimental to us to not be able to get the proper nourishment that we need, because we're fasting for Ramadan during that time of the month. So although we may have, you know, what some believe to be a burden or an inconvenience, the misunderstanding is that we're not supposed to lead. So you cannot be an imam, but you can lead, and this is incorrect thinking, that you, as a woman, you can't lead. And this book brought me a lot of understanding in the incorrect thinking that I had. Aisha was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him's favorite wife. And I know a lot of brothers have talked to me. I've actually had some brothers try to make propositions about being a co-wife. That's a different story for another day. It's not for everybody, right? People are like, well, the prophet did it. Are you acting like a prophet, bro? Are you doing what the prophet does to be able to have many wives? Anyways, it's not for everybody. Sometimes you only have the energy for one wife. Sometimes you have your work cut out for you just trying to figure out your one wife. You know, it has to be rooted. If somebody does do polygamy, it has to be rooted in the right reasons. It can't just be because you want a variety of women to have sex with. But that's not what this whole book, that's not what this whole, this book or this talk is about. We can talk about polygamy another day. And so Aisha, this book is about Aisha. And Aisha was the Prophet's youngest wife. He was married to Khadijah. That was his first wife. And Khadijah passed away. And when he married her, she was a widow. And I'm not sure if she was a widow or her and her husband had divorced. But I want to say she was a widow. And she was a mom. And I believe she was in her 30s. And he fell in love with Khadijah. She was really good to him. She nurtured him. And he loved her very much, to the point where it's described that he almost went through almost a little bit of a depression when Khadijah died. But Khadijah was his only wife while they were married. So his first marriage, well, he only had one wife, but he did end up taking on multiple wives, which is allowed in the faith of Islam. Men are allowed to have up to 4 wives. And so Aisha was described as feisty, and she was the youngest. And she wasn't really having it when she first got into the marriage. She was very jealous, very, very, very jealous of the fact that the Prophet, peace be upon him, Prophet Muhammad, had multiple wives. And the thing about Aisha was she was the Prophet's favorite wife. And in this book, it describes why he loved Aisha the most. And Aisha ends up passing away at the age of 66. And right before she passed, they wanted to bury her next to the Prophet and her father Abu Bakr. But she requested to be buried with the other wives, because initially she was jealous and she said, I'm better than them. You don't need them, I'm better than them. Get rid of them. But she had evolved so much that before her passing, she said, I want to be buried with the other wives because I'm no better than them, even though she was his favorite. And so I really liked that part of this story because it really represented her evolution and her growth and her change. And I started asking, why did the Prophet love Aisha the most? And the way that I saw it was the fact that she was capable of exhibiting tremendous growth and did not remain in stagnation. But Aisha was the scholar. Often when women had a question about the faith, the Prophet, peace be upon him, would refer them to Aisha. He was her confidant, and this book describes her telling him everything. She put such a trust in him that there was nothing that she didn't run by him. Any idea, any thought, she ran everything by the Prophet. Their closeness was like undescribable. The bond between them was tight, to say the least. That was his best friend. And it was kind of similar in my opinion, at least on Aisha's end, to the bond that we're supposed to have with Allah, with our Creator. And another thing that I thought was really interesting in this book is that the author deliberately uses God instead of Allah. And from what I understand, that Christians in Arabic-speaking countries say Allahu Akbar, which means God is the greatest. So God is the same thing as Allah. It's not two separate entities or two separate sources. It is just a matter of language. And there are books, like a book that I want to pick up, that talks about the many names of God. The Sustainer, the Redeemer, the Most Merciful, the Most Compassionate, the Most High. It's all like names of the same source, the same Creator that we're all coming from. I say the Creator because I think that it's a very great way to describe the Most High, because He's the Creator of everything and everyone. So I say the Creator usually. But I think that it's interesting that she deliberately chose to use the word God. Since it's an English book, the book is written in English, she decided, give people a little lesson. People think that Allah is different from God. No, God is Allah, just in Arabic, just in the Arabic language. But anyways, so back to Aisha. Aisha and the Prophet Muhammad were like that, real close, real tight. And this is why she got tested. Her faith got tried. Rumors began that Aisha cheated on the Prophet. And this is the part that had me bawling in tears. She was accused of adultery. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, wasn't sure if these rumors were true. And so they separated, and she moved back home to her dad's house, Abu Bakr. And he said that he needed to pray on it. And he was going to ask for discernment to figure out what was true. And due to their closeness, Aisha was devastated. She was devastated. And the Prophet had been known to quite enjoy solitude, which I've noticed is a common thread of a lot of people who are spiritualists. Like you can even say like the monks, like a lot of like Buddhist monks or like Tibetan monks will go to the mountains and they'll spend time alone. A lot of very spiritual people, a lot of intellects really like solitude. They like to be alone. And there's a reason for that, but that's a conversation again for another day. And so he needed some time alone, and he needed to figure out if it was true or not, because, she was heartbroken, he's heartbroken. He was the love of his life, his best friend, his confidant, the one that, she trusted the most, ran all her ideas by him, loved him out of this world. And all of a sudden, he's thinking, has she been unfaithful? So he needed some time alone. He needed to figure out if it was true or not. And he needed to pray on it to gain discernment. So they separated. And Aisha just cried and spent nights just weeping. She was riddled with grief and sorrow. She believed that maybe she was losing her best friend and the man that she loved the most. But through her grief, she became a true companion of God. As believers, sometimes we think that we fall in love with people, and the truth is that we really fall in love with the Spirit of God within them. Our Creator never wanted us to lose sight of that. As women, our love for our partners can almost be like worship. Ladies, that's blasphemous. And a man that's not in tune with his role or his responsibility to God's kingdom may see this as extremely flattering. He may love the fact that you'll do anything for him and you almost put him on like a godlike pedestal. It's going to inflate his ego. But this is not to be confused with loyalty, ladies. That's not our role. Be loyal to the man who is deserving of your loyalty and trust because he is representative of the Most High. Because he's doing God's work. Like, you never make anybody your God. And your man is just your spouse, your husband, your partner, you know. Yes, love them, but you don't love them the way that you love God. And so, for a period of time, the prophet was away for Aisha, and her deep despair and grief turned into prayer, and she would pray relentlessly that God would reveal the truth of her innocence. She prayed tirelessly, but even more so than her reputation among the people, she prayed that her husband would return to her. I don't think that Aisha cared as much about people looking at her as an adulterer. I think that she was really heartbroken by the idea that the trust may be broken, that their relationship could be tarnished by these allegations. Aisha was strong, you know. I don't think that she was so much worried about what the people were saying and the gossip of it. But, you know, when you really value somebody, you value your bond with them. And so that's the reason why she was so heartbroken. And after some time in solitude and prayer, the prophet, you know, knew, it was revealed to him that Aisha was innocent. But at this point, you know, Aisha had developed the bond with God that she needed. And that's what this whole thing was about. They destroyed her reputation because God didn't want Aisha to put the prophet, as holy as he was, on a godlike pedestal. So he had to take him away. He had to take, you know, him away from her. And he had to take her reputation away from her. So she would have nothing left to rely on but her creator. And that's what this whole thing was about. And so the prophet returned to her parents' house where she was staying during their separation, and wanted his wife back, of course. And they were reunited. He was reunited with his true love, Aisha. And it was a celebratory moment, but, you know, everybody thought Aisha would be so happy, and she didn't even really thank the prophet. She thanked Allah. She thanked her creator. And that was the whole point of the whole thing. And so I started thinking, why did the prophet love Aisha the most? You know, we fall in love with people for different reasons, but for me, I love the man who embodies the qualities of our creator. And righteous men love women who embody the qualities of our creator. What we fail to understand is what we're here to do. We're here to do his work. And yes, even in a religion like Al-Islam, where women are stigmatized of being oppressed and repressed, God still wants you to know that that's the stigma that man created. That's not his ruling. Because if you go back, some people may say, oh, Islam is so oppressive, repressive, da-da. I've read the Old Testament. I was like, what? What did it say? Something to the effect of, if a woman is on her period, she's to like sit on a rock or something like that. Like, it's like, whoa, you know? So a lot of times the Bible, that is, you know, oh, God is just love. Everybody, you know, is welcome. Nah, that's not really the Bible. That's man, like, kind of watering down what he wants. the Bible to be, to make it just a little easier for him. No offense, no dig at the Christians, because I love you guys too, but that's kind of how I see it. And so Aisha was the woman that the prophet loved the most, because I believe that she had the propensity to do the work to the highest degree. And we're here to do the work. And she was extraordinarily scholarly, and she was also described as extremely charitable. And Muslims love the poor. It's an attribute of believers. Believers love the poor. One of the 5 pillars of the faith is zakat, which in Arabic means charity. And there are stories that Aisha was blessed with a large sum of money and she just gave it all away. And the prophet was her mentor. He taught her a lot about the faith, and she just absorbed it like a sponge. She absorbed everything that he taught her. And then she took it to the next level as a scholar and as a faith leader before the women. She was doing God's work. And that's why he loved her, because she loved God a lot. And he cherished the woman who is of most service to our Creator and of most service to mankind. And he appointed her to be a leader. So as much as they may say, hey, Islam is restrictive and things like that, well, the prophet, peace be upon him, made Aisha the leader. He told women, go to Aisha. They got questions, that he would refer them to Aisha because she had the knowledge and she was doing the work. And when he taught her, it was obvious that the knowledge that he imparted on her was not falling upon deaf ears. He loved the woman who embodied her love for our Creator the most. And truly, that's what it should be about, our service to mankind and how useful we are. And what it is faith plus action. So to the Muslimas or women of different faiths, I'm not sure if it's enough just to pray. You must see yourself in your purpose and in your assignment from God. And to me, that's women empowerment, knowing that despite your husband and the level of admiration and respect that you have for him, respect the sense that you see the greater picture and in your understanding that you have a role too. And it's different roles. I don't tell you what your role is. That's a sacred thing that you ask your Creator. What am I here to do? What is my purpose? Mary, I think her purpose was just to have Jesus. Like, that was her whole purpose. Just to birth Jesus. And then her work here was done, right? Everyone has an assignment. I don't know what your assignment is, but despite you being a mother or you being a wife or whatever it is, that doesn't negate your personal assignment from our Creator. And I think that that's very empowering as women, understanding that. And with that, know that sometimes it's better to be happy than it is to be right. What do I mean by that? Well, we're not here to be quarrelsome and competitive with our mate or with our partners. And even though we know sometimes, actually quite often, we're right, it's still better to be happy and at peace and not at a variance with the cohesion of your family than to be right. And this kind of brings me back to the original point. Why did I talk about vanity? Why did I talk about how our vanity and our overemphasis on how we look may be rooted in this sense of being deprived? Well, there's a lot of times that our attachment to be right is our ego, ladies. And why? Fellas, you know when you look at your lady in her eyes and you guys are having a fight, it's like she's not letting up. Why? Why is she so attached to being right? Why is it so important? It may be an argument that's not even a big deal. This is not an argument over the well-being of our children or like something like our salvation or like something that's really important. Why is she so adamant that she's got to have the last word? She's gonna go toe to toe with you. Why? Same thing. When you live in a society that is repressive, oppressive, doesn't value your word, puts a limited value on you as a human being because you're a woman, tells you to be quiet. Men can make a YouTube video for a 4-hour video, a lecture, but if you post on IG daily, you're doing too much. You start talking, you're talking too much. Quiet, be quiet. Be seen, not heard, right? And so this urgency, this desperation, I gotta have the last word, it comes from that. It's birthed, it's rooted. Like, understand, men, a lot of times what you're feeling, like those verbal lashings and like this like craziness from this woman who like has to have the last word, it's not you. It's the collection of experiences that you're feeling, that you've triggered something in her where all of that feeling repressed, feeling unvalued is coming out on you, and now you are challenging her very existence. It's like she's got to claim her throne. This is more about her than it is about you, understand that? But I will say, ladies, you got to evolve in that area. You got to evolve in your state of consciousness because, ladies, you are winning the battle to lose the war. And hopefully you've attracted a partner that respects you and that recognizes your value, which is what the prophet did to Aisha. When she had her little jealous fits, he would just make her laugh and tell jokes because he thought it was petty and immature or whatever, but he recognized her value. He said, I'm not going to go toe-to-toe with Aisha. I'm just going to make her laugh. I'm just going to, she'll be all right. And so, ladies, I'm not telling you always take the back seat. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is it worth the price of your family to get the last word and to go toe-to-toe with your partner? Prioritize. Even a business owner knows what to prioritize. Even a business owner is going to let certain things slide. We don't have time for that. We can't put our energy into that. And trust me, it's better to be happy than it is to be right. So sometimes you just got to say, all right, whatever, for the sake of the cohesion of your family. And men too, like I said, the prophet showed his utmost respect for Aisha, and he was just kind of lighthearted about her jealousy and whatnot. And so, I encourage you to pick this book up. I got it from Amazon. Like I said, it was a very quick read. It was a tearjerker. Really made me look at our role and responsibility as women in a whole new way. And, I wanted to talk about this whole thing that I learned in this book, that one of the things that our Creator hates the most is quarrel. Somebody with a quarrelsome personality who loves to pick a fight, a provoker, an antagonizer, an agitator, an irritator, someone who just loves to fight all day. And it's told that when someone tries to bring aggravation or provoke or antagonize the believer, especially during the month of Ramadan, that the believers are instructed to say, I am fasting 3 times. I am fasting, I am fasting, I am fasting. Like, people don't understand that there's grave consequences for you to attempt to provoke a believer, especially during Ramadan. Intertwined in the pillars of Islam is peace. Assalamu alaikum means may peace be on to you. All about peace. And so you've got these people that do thrive off of that energy of wanting to be combative and just antagonize and provoke you to get angry. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, has instructed believers, and this is a hadith where somebody asked him the same question, no, a different question, 3 times. And he said the same thing each time, don't get angry. But what about? Don't get angry. But what about this? What about that? Do not get angry. As my father being a chaplain in the upstate penitentiary, I'm talking Attica, people. Attica. Dad spent decades of his life in Attica. As sweet as my dad was, and my dad was a sweetheart, we went to the theater to see Free Willy. He was crying like a baby. Loved the animals. Very, very warm-hearted. Very, very warm-hearted. But the brothers in Attica respected him as the first Muslim chaplain. He was saving their lives. And from what I understand, from what I learned, a lot of those brothers were there because of anger. Anger can be so blinding. Rage can be so... It can lead you to do things that are so out of your character. You know, there's people that murder and crimes of passion. And so when the Prophet instructs the believers not to get angry, it's for your own good. Because a lot of the brothers that are behind bars right now are there because of their anger. And so I believe, yes, there are grave consequences and repercussions to those who are constantly trying to disturb the peace of believers. And to the believers, I say fight when necessary. I mean, that's what the Quran says. That's what the Hadith say. Yeah, you got to fight when necessary. But ultimately, you leave it to our Creator. So if Allah, if our Creator hates the quarrelsome the most, the antagonizers the most, then just imagine what He's going to do with them. And what's worse than receiving His wrath? And nothing happens, not even a leaf falls without His permission. So it may be a good time to ask yourself, why does He allow them to provoke you? And for the believers, I think that you are loved so much that there's nothing that happens, even if it appears to be a bad thing, that's not designed and orchestrated for your rise. And it's imperative to understand that it was God that created the devil. It was Allah that created the shaitan, the Dajjal. You say, why? Why did God create the devil? That's like an age-old question. I think that God created the devil for you to rise up to your power. Shout out to Nazira. For you to wake up the sleeping giant. Before the shaitan can even strike you, he's got to get permission from Allah. He uses them, not the opposite. God uses them for you to rise up to your power. So if the Dajjal comes to you as a sexy woman and her intention is to tempt you, that's an opportunity for that man to strengthen himself and tame his lower nature. Because down the road, where you're inheriting this big purpose These things are refinement. You got this big purpose, but you can't control your anger. You got this big purpose, but you can't control your little man. So if agents of Shaitan are constantly trying you and trying to anger you, the greater understanding should be that you are being tested to gain emotional control. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. Don't get angry. And how do you know if you really have peace if your peace isn't tested? At times, it can appear that your burden is just like more than you can bear. And you may start to question, and this has happened to me, like, why aren't they being tested? Why am I the only one who has to endure all these tests and these very, very hard tests, and they seem insurmountable, and it seems like a mountain that's just an endless climb. Like, how strong do I have to be? How faithful do I have to be? How much do I have to do to prove to you that I'm really loyal to you? It can feel like that sometimes. But again, you have to have the wisdom and the understanding that says that some people don't get tested and tried because the Shaitan has them already. What does he need to test these people for if he already has them? They have proven themselves to be weak. They have proven themselves to fold under pressure. The test that Allah brought to them was just too much. It was too hard, so they gave up. They threw in the towel and decided to work for the adversary because they were not strong enough to endure these circumstances. They weren't like you. And so you never compare yourself to them. You never question why it appears why your life is unfair. You are privileged to be tried and constantly face tasks that seem unachievable. That means that your Creator still has faith in you. That means that your Creator hasn't turned his back on you. And for some time, you know, for some people, it didn't take much. Sometimes it was the first heartbreak, the first challenge that they were met with. They said, I never want to feel like this again. I can't endure this pain. They became angry with God. Some of them, it was just like a faint scent of poverty, just like the faintest scent of poverty. The idea of existing in this world with no materialism was something that they just were not willing to do. So they gave up on their attempt to do the right thing and be righteous. And that doesn't make them stronger than you. In fact, it makes them weaker than you. Like, understand that. Like, get your mind right. And if they were not weaker, then there wouldn't be so many of them against you. Perhaps we were all created equally. Perhaps we weren't. Perhaps the Most High knew who was inclined to be stronger, knew who was inclined to fight the fight, knew who was inclined to keep their faith no matter what, no matter how they've been tried and tested. And after difficulty certainly comes ease. Surely after the test, if you pass it, you're going to come to your rise. But you can't talk that boss talk if you haven't done what bosses do. And you can't walk that boss walk if you haven't been through the fire. And that's what people really need to understand. You can't be a boss until you've been tested like a boss. Until you've endured like a boss. Until you've earned your stripes. If you threw in the towel, you can't talk that boss talk. You can't talk that alpha male talk if you didn't pass your test. And you can't get mad when someone doesn't recognize you for being a boss. Like, not everybody is like equal. Like, not everybody's gonna get the reward. Maybe everybody's equal. Maybe some people just don't live up to what they're here for. I don't know. I still got questions. I'm still on this path of self-mastery just like everyone else. But I don't come from the school that everybody who plays the game gets the reward. I never believed in that. Not everybody gets the trophy. You sat on the bench the whole time. Why are you getting a trophy? For some people, it might have been the idea of solitude. They settled for a mate that wasn't of God because they didn't want to be alone. They threw the towel in. For some people, it was their ego and their pride. The idea of not being looked at as a winner on earth was unbearable to them. They gave it up. They threw in the towel. For some people, it was when they got heartbroken. For some people, it was a parent. That happens really often. A lot of times, our first heartbreak comes from our dad. A lot of times, our first taste of neglect comes from our parent, an absent parent. You know, coming from a broken home. They didn't get hugged enough as a child, or their mom said certain things, hurtful things to damage their self-esteem. But that's life. It's no excuse to be an adversary on this earth, to be detrimental now because you didn't get the proper love that you wanted as a kid. We all got our reasons. That's not an excuse. We all have them. And some of us have even way more than others. It's all a test. Either you rise to the occasion or you fold. And you don't get mad when the ones who rose to the occasion don't embrace you. You don't really get to have it both ways. I don't know. I mean, in this game of life, where are you? Are you a bench warmer? And if you sit there and you warm the bench because you're too scared to rise up to the assignment that your Creator has for you, what do you expect? What do you expect? I'm going to expand upon this in another video, but that's all for today. Until next time, everybody. Peace.